The room was cold and white. Bright lights hung from the ceiling. Cameras floated in the air, pointing at the single chair in the middle. HFY walked slowly to that chair. His forelegs made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. His body was covered in hard shell, like armor that grew from his skin. But that armor was burned in many places. Dark marks covered his chest and arms. These were wounds that would never heal. He sat down. His large black eyes looked at the beings around him. There were reporters from 100 different worlds. They had come to the Sara Prime, a neutral planet, to hear him speak. The Galactic News Network was broadcasting this to every corner of known space. Billions of beings were watching. HFY had been a tactical officer in the Dominion fleet. The Dominion was the greatest power in the galaxy. They had conquered 400 worlds. They had never lost a war. And then they met the humans. A reporter spoke first. She was a tall creature with silver skin and no mouth. Her words came from a device on her neck. "You asked to speak today. The galaxy is listening. What do you want to tell us?" HFY was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke in a voice that was rough and tired. "I want to tell you about the human war front. I want to tell you what we did, and what they did to us. I want every species in this galaxy to understand one thing." He leaned forward. "We thought we were conquering a primitive species. We were so terribly wrong." He began his story. The Dominion had watched humans for 50 years. They were a young species. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. They had spread to 12 colony worlds, but their technology was simple. Their ships were small. Their weapons were weak. The Dominion Council decided that humans would be easy to conquer. Their worlds would become farms and factories for the Empire. Commander Vexire was chosen to lead the attack. He was a hero of 12 campaigns. He had never failed. He took a fleet of 12 cruisers to the human colony called New Montana. It was a farming world with 2 million people. There was a small defense force of perhaps 30 ships. HFY was on the command ship that day. He remembered watching the human planet grow larger on the screens. It was a green and blue world, very beautiful. He felt nothing for the beings who lived there. They were just another species to be conquered. The human ships came to meet them. They were so small. The largest was perhaps 1/10 the size of a Dominion cruiser. Vexillor laughed when he saw them. He ordered his fleet to destroy them quickly so they could begin landing troops. The battle should have lasted minutes. It lasted 6 hours. The human ships would not retreat. Even when they were damaged, even when they were burning, they kept fighting. They flew in ways that should have been impossible. They took risks that no sane pilot would take. And they died. One by one, they died. But each one took Dominion fighters with them. HFY remembered one pilot in particular. His name, they learned later, was Danny Ortiz. He was 23 years old. He had been flying cargo ships before the war. His fighter was hit early in the battle. Half his ship was gone. He was leaking air and fuel. Any normal pilot would have tried to escape or surrender. Danny Ortiz flew his broken ship directly at the Dominion flagship. The shield stopped him, but only barely. The explosion damaged the shield generator. It took precious minutes to repair. In those minutes, human bombers got through. They destroyed 2 Dominion cruisers before the shields came back up. HFY watched Danny Ortiz die on his screen. The human's face was visible for just a moment through the cockpit glass. He was smiling. "Why?" HFY asked out loud. No one answered him. The Dominion won the battle. They killed every human ship. They landed troops and took control of New Montana. By all measures, it was a victory. But Vexillor was not celebrating. He had lost 2 cruisers and 40 fighters to a force that should have been destroyed in minutes. He had watched humans fly into certain death rather than surrender. He had seen something in their eyes that he did not understand. Kepharan went to the planet's surface after the battle. He walked through a small town that had been bombed. Buildings were broken. Fires burned everywhere. Human bodies lay in the streets. He found a human female sitting next to a destroyed house. She was holding a small child who was not moving. The female looked up at Kepharan. There was blood on her face. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was not afraid. She looked at him with something he had never seen from a conquered species. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was hate. Pure, burning hate. And something else. A promise thought she spoke in her language. Kepharan's translator turned her words into something he could understand. "You will pay for this," she said. "Every single one of you. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if I die. You will pay." Kepharan should have killed her. She was threatening an officer of the Dominion. But something stopped him. Something in her eyes made him turn away and walk back to his ship. He reported to Vexillor what he had seen. The human female. Her words. The look in her eyes. Vexillor dismissed it. "They are primitives," the commander said. "They will learn to accept Dominion rule. They all do, in the end." Kepharan was not so sure. He had seen many conquered species. He had seen them cry and beg and surrender. He had never seen one look at him the way that human female did. Years later, he would learn her name. Maria Delgado. She would become one of the most feared resistance leaders in the war. She would kill more Dominion soldiers than any human army. And she would survive to see the Dominion fall. But that was the future. On that day, Kepharan simply returned to his ship. The fleet prepared to move to the next target. There were 11 more human worlds to conquer. The Dominion High Council sent messages of congratulation. The war was going exactly as planned. Humans would be fully conquered within 1 year. They were wrong. The war would last 8 years. It would cost the Dominion everything. And it would begin with a simple truth that Kepharan understood before anyone else. Humans did not know how to surrender. They did not know how to give up. They would fight until they won or until every single one of them was dead. And there were 8 billion of them. The real war was just beginning. Kepharan paused in his testimony. The reporters waited in silence. Some of them had never heard a Dominion officer speak so openly about defeat. He took a breath and continued. After the first battles in space, Kepharan was transferred to ground forces. The Dominion needed soldiers to hold the human worlds they had captured. He was sent to a planet called Kepler's Hope. It was a mining colony with 500,000 humans. The Dominion had taken it easily. Most of the population had surrendered. The war there was supposed to be over. It was not over. It was just changing into something worse. The Dominion built a large base outside the main city. 3,000 soldiers were stationed there. They had tanks and aircraft and weapons that could destroy buildings with a single shot. The humans had nothing. Their military had been destroyed. Their weapons had been taken. They were farmers and miners and factory workers. And yet, every night, Dominion soldiers died. It started small. A patrol would go out and never return. A supply truck would explode on an empty road. A guard would be found dead at his post with a knife in his throat. The Dominion commanders were confused. They searched for enemy soldiers, but found nothing because there were no enemy soldiers. There were only ordinary humans who had decided they would rather die than live under Dominion rule. Kepharan first heard the name Maria Delgado 2 months after he arrived. She was the woman from New Montana, the woman whose child had died, the woman who had promised revenge. She had somehow escaped the occupation and traveled to Kepler's Hope. She found other humans who wanted to fight. Not soldiers, just people. teachers and cooks and mechanics. She taught them how to make bombs from mining chemicals. She taught them how to move without being seen. She taught them that fear was a weapon they could use. Her group started with 12 people. Within 6 months, there were 40. They called themselves the Ghosts. Kethvaran led a squad that was sent to find them. They had information that the Ghosts were hiding in an old mine outside the city. 50 Dominion soldiers went into that mine. They had armor and night vision and heavy weapons. 12 soldiers came out. The humans had filled the tunnels with traps. Holes covered with cloth that dropped soldiers into pits filled with metal spikes. Wires that triggered explosions. Dead ends where humans waited in the darkness with knives made from broken tools. The Dominion soldiers could not use their heavy weapons without bringing the whole mine down on themselves. Kethvaran survived because he was near the back of the group. He heard the screams of his soldiers echoing through the dark tunnels. He heard humans laughing. Actually laughing. They were enjoying this dot after that night. He began to understand something about humans. They were not fighting to win. They knew they could not beat the Dominion with 40 people and homemade weapons. They were fighting because fighting was all they had left. They were fighting because surrender was worse than death. They were fighting because every Dominion soldier they killed was payment for their dead families. This was not war. This was something else. Something the Dominion had never faced before. The Dominion commanders responded with cruelty. They took human prisoners and killed them publicly. They burned villages that they suspected of helping the resistance. They thought fear would make the humans stop fighting. Instead, more humans joined the resistance. Every village the Dominion burned created 100 new enemies. Every prisoner they killed had family who swore revenge. Kethvaran remembered a human mechanic named Eddie Tran. He was a quiet man who fixed vehicles at the Dominion base. He had been doing this job for a year. He smiled at the Dominion soldiers. He followed every order. Everyone thought he had accepted the occupation. Then one day, Eddie Tran walked into the command center. The building was full of officers planning the next operation against the resistance. Eddie was carrying his tool bag. No one stopped him. No one searched him. The tool bag was full of explosives. Kethvaran was outside the building when it exploded. The blast threw him 20 meters. When he woke up, the command center was gone. 47 Dominion officers were dead. The entire leadership of the occupation was destroyed in one moment. Eddie Tran's body was found near the center of the explosion. He had been standing right next to the commanding general. There was enough left of his face to see that he had been smiling. The reporters in the interview room were silent. One of them, a creature with many small eyes, spoke carefully. Why did he do this? He knew he would die. Kethvaran looked at the reporter. That is the question we could never answer. Why would any being choose death so easily? We asked human prisoners this question many times. The answer was always the same. He paused, remembering. They said their lives were not more important than their freedom. They said dying for something was better than living for nothing. They said their children would remember them as heroes, not as slaves. Kethvaran shook his head slowly. We did not understand. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of species. All of them chose to live as servants rather than die as fighters. We thought this was normal. We thought all beings wanted to survive above everything else. He touched the burn marks on his shell. Humans taught us we were wrong. They taught us that some beings would rather burn than bend. And once we understood this, we knew we could not win. The occupation of Kepler's Hope lasted 3 years. By the end, the Dominion had lost 8,000 soldiers. The resistance had grown from 40 people to 5,000. Maria Delgado was still alive, still fighting, still killing. The Dominion eventually decided the planet was not worth the cost. They withdrew their forces. It was the first time in Dominion history that they abandoned a conquered world, but it would not be the last. The same story repeated on every human planet. No matter how many troops the Dominion sent, no matter how much destruction they caused, humans kept fighting. Old women picked up guns when their sons died. Children carried messages through enemy lines. Wounded soldiers refused to leave the battlefield. Kethvaran had a word for what he witnessed on those worlds. He used it now, speaking to the reporters and the billions watching across the galaxy. Hell, he said. The human war front was hell. Not for them. For us. Every day was a new nightmare. Every night brought new attacks. We were the conquerors, but we lived in fear. And they, the conquered, they were not afraid of anything. Not even death. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted by his memories. We thought we were making them suffer. We did not realize they were making us suffer more. And unlike us, they did not want to stop. They wanted to hurt us forever. That was the moment I knew the Dominion would lose this war. Kethvaran asked for water. His throat was dry from speaking. A small robot brought him a glass. He drank slowly, his clawed hands shaking slightly. The memories he was sharing were not easy to carry. The reporters waited patiently. They knew the story was not finished. The ground war had been terrible, but it was not what destroyed the Dominion. Something else happened. Something that changed everything. Kethvaran set down his glass and continued. For 3 years, the Dominion controlled the space around human worlds. Their fleets were too powerful. Human ships were too few and too small. Humans could fight on the ground, but they could not break the blockade that surrounded their planets. Food and supplies were running low. Some in the Dominion High Council believed humans would eventually starve and surrender. They did not know about the defiant hope dug deep in the asteroid belt of the human home system. Hidden among millions of rocks and debris, humans have been building something in secret. While their colonies fought and died, while the Dominion celebrated victory after victory, human engineers worked day and night on the largest ship ever constructed by their species. The Defiant. Hope was a dreadnought. It was not as big as a Dominion flagship, but it was something new, something dangerous. The humans had spent every resource they had on this single ship. They had invented new weapons, new shields, new engines. They had created something that should not have been possible for such a young species. The ship's commander was Admiral Patricia Vance. Kethvaran spoke her name with something that sounded almost like respect. She was 60 years old when the war began. Her son had been a pilot at New Montana. He died in the first battle, flying his damaged ship into a Dominion cruiser. Just like Danny Ortiz, just like so many others, Patricia Vance did not cry when she heard the news. She did not scream or break down. She simply walked into the command center and asked one question: what do we need to win? The answer was the Defiant Hope. Kethvaran was back in space when the ship revealed itself. He was serving on a Dominion cruiser near Orion's Gate, a strategic point between human space and Dominion territory. 17 Dominion warships guarded this position. It was considered impossible to break through. The Defiant Hope came out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of them. It was alone. One ship against 17. Admiral Vance sent a message to the Dominion fleet. Kethvaran remembered her exact words. You came to our home. You killed our people. Now we are coming to yours. The Dominion commander laughed. He ordered all 17 ships to attack at once. It should have been over in seconds, but humans had done something impossible. The Defiant Hope's jump drive was different. Normal ships needed several minutes to calculate a faster-than-light jump. The Defiant Hope could do it in seconds. And the humans had turned this into a weapon. The ship jumped. It disappeared. Then it reappeared inside the Dominion formation, behind the defensive lines, directly next to a cruiser. The Defiant Hope fired everything at point-blank range. The cruiser exploded before its shields could activate Dot. Then the Defiant Hope jumped again. And again. And again, Dot. It was like fighting a ghost. The ship would appear, destroy something, and vanish before anyone could react. The Dominion ships started firing at empty space where the Defiant Hope had been a second before. Some ships accidentally hit each other in the confusion. Kethvaran watched this happen from his station. His hands were frozen over his controls. He could not believe what he was seeing. This was not possible. No ship could jump so quickly. No crew could survive such rapid transitions through faster-than-light space. But humans did not care about possible. The navigator on the Defiant Hope was a young lieutenant named Cody Barnes. He was 26 years old. His job was to calculate each jump in real time. This meant doing mathematics that normally required powerful computers. He had to do it in his head, under combat conditions. While the ship was being shot at Dot, when asked later how he managed this, Cody Barnes gave a simple answer. "I was really angry," he said. "Anger helps me focus." The Battle of Orion's Gate lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 12 Dominion ships were destroyed. The remaining 5 were retreating at maximum speed. The Defiant Hope was damaged but still fighting. It had taken hits that should have killed it 3 times over. But humans kept repairing it during the battle. They kept fighting even when entire sections of the ship were burning. Kethvaran's ship was one of the 5 that retreated. He remembered the silence on the bridge. No one spoke. No one could understand what had happened. They had outnumbered the humans 17-1. They had the best weapons, the best ships, the best training. And they had lost. The news of Orion's Gate spread across the galaxy in hours. For the first time, other species saw that the Dominion could be beaten. Subject worlds that had been quiet for centuries began to stir. The Dominion was not invincible. Humans had proven it. Admiral Vance did not stop at Orion's Gate. The Defiant Hope led a fleet of smaller ships deeper into Dominion space. They attacked supply lines. They destroyed fuel stations. They freed prisoners from Dominion camps. Everywhere they went, they won. Patricia Vance became a legend. Not just to humans, but to every species that had ever been conquered by the Dominion. Her face appeared on secret messages passed between rebels on 100 worlds. Her words were whispered in the darkness of Dominion prisons. Kethvaran saw her once, from a distance, during a prisoner exchange. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She did not look like a warrior. She looked like someone's grandmother. But when she looked at the Dominion officers, there was something in her eyes that made them step back. It was the same look Kethvaran had seen in Maria Delgado. The same look he had seen in Eddie Trandot. It was the look of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Someone who would burn the galaxy down to protect what they loved. Someone who was not fighting for victory, but for something deeper. Something the Dominion did not understand. The High Council ordered 20 more ships to stop the Defiant Hope. Then 50. Then 100. It did not matter. Humans had learned how to win. And they were not going to stop. The interview room had grown darker. The lights above Kethvaran seemed dimmer than before. Or perhaps it was just the weight of what he was about to say. The reporters leaned forward. They knew the worst part of the story was coming. Kethvaran spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. After the Battle of Orion's Gate, the Dominion High Council made a decision that would destroy everything. They were afraid. For the first time in their long history, they were truly afraid. Humans were winning battles. Subject species were getting restless. The great Dominion Empire was shaking Dot, so they decided to send a message. A message that would remind the galaxy why the Chilish Dominion was feared. They chose a human colony called Eden's Rest. It was a peaceful world. 4 million people lived there. Families, children, old people, who had come to spend their final years in a beautiful place. Eden's Rest had no military value. It was not a threat to anyone. The Dominion sent a planet cracker. Kethvaram paused. Some of the reporters did not know what a planet cracker was. He explained in a flat voice. It was a weapon designed to break a planet apart, to turn a living world into floating rocks. It was supposed to be used only against enemy military bases hidden deep underground. It had never been used against a populated world. Until Eden's Rest. Kethvaran was not there when it happened, but he saw the recordings later. Everyone did. The Dominion broadcasted across the galaxy as a warning. The weapon took 1 hour to work. 1 hour for 4 million humans to watch their sky crack open. 1 hour for them to hold their families and say goodbye. 1 hour for children to ask their parents what was happening. Then the planet broke, and 4 million lives ended in fire and darkness. The Dominion expected humans to surrender. They expected fear to make humans weak. They sent messages offering peace if humans would accept Dominion rule. Instead, humans did something no species had ever done before. They declared what they called unconditional war. This meant no rules, no limits, no mercy. Humans would fight until the Dominion was destroyed or until every human was dead. There would be no peace. There would be no negotiation. There would only be war until the end. General Rosa Medina led the human response. She was 52 years old. Before the war, she had been a teacher at a military academy. Her husband, her parents, and her 3 children had all lived on Eden's Rest. She had nothing left to lose. And she had everything she needed to make the Dominion pay. Human forces changed their strategy. Before, they had attacked military targets. Ships, bases, weapons factories. Now they attacked everything. They did not kill Dominion civilians. That was important to them. Even in their rage, even after Eden's Rest, they would not murder innocents. But they did something almost worse. They made Dominion civilians afraid. Human ships appeared near Dominion food worlds. They destroyed cargo ships carrying supplies. They damaged water purification plants. They disabled communication networks. They never killed civilians directly, but they made sure every Dominion citizen knew that humans could reach them anywhere. A human soldier named Pete Kowalski was captured during one of these raids. The Dominion interrogated him for days. They wanted to know human plans, human weaknesses, human secrets. Pete Kowalski told them nothing useful. But he did say one thing that Kethvaran would never forget. The interrogator asked him why humans were fighting so brutally. They had been offered peace. They could have stopped the killing. Why did they continue? Pete looked at his captors with dead eyes. "You started this," he said. "We are going to finish it. And when we are done, every species in this galaxy will know what happens when you attack humanity." He smiled. It was not a happy smile. "You killed 4 million of our people in 1 hour. Do you know how many Dominion planets there are? Hundreds, thousands. We have a lot of work to do." The interrogator asked what he meant. "We are going to make sure the Dominion never threatens anyone again," Pete said. "Not us, not anyone. You are going to be an example, a lesson. The galaxy will tell stories about what happened to the Dominion for 1 million years. And the lesson will be simple. Do not make war on humans." The recording of that interrogation was sent to the High Council. It was supposed to show how dangerous and crazy humans were. Instead, it terrified the Dominion leadership. They realized that humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for revenge. And revenge had no limit. Dominion fleet commanders began to refuse orders. Fighting humans was suicide. No one wanted to be the next example of human anger. Ships that were sent to human space would report engine problems or supply shortages. Anything to avoid battle. Subject species saw this. They saw the Dominion's fear. On world after world, rebellions began. Species that had been conquered for centuries suddenly remembered how to fight. They had all suffered under the Dominion. Now they saw a chance to be free. General Medina sent messages to these rebellions. She promised human help. She promised weapons and ships and soldiers. She promised that the Dominion would fall, and every conquered species would be free. Kethvaran watched his empire crumble. He watched the fear spread through Dominion ranks. He watched friends and comrades desert their posts and run away. He watched the mighty Dominion, conqueror of 400 worlds, become the conquered dot, and at the center of it, all were humans. Small, weak, short-lived humans. They had no special powers. They had no ancient wisdom. They were young and foolish and emotional. But they had something the Dominion did not have. They had the ability to take pain and turn it into strength. They had the ability to watch their worlds burn and keep fighting. They had the ability to lose everything and still refuse to give up. The Dominion destroyed Eden's rest to break human spirit. Instead, they created 4 million ghosts that would haunt them until the end. Every human who died became a reason for living humans to fight harder. Every atrocity became fuel for human rage. Kethvaran looked at the reporters. His voice was barely a whisper. "We made them angry," he said. "That was our mistake. You can defeat an enemy who fights for land or wealth or power. But you cannot defeat an enemy who fights for rage. Rage does not get tired. Rage does not give up. Rage burns until there is nothing left." He closed his eyes. And humans had enough rage to burn the entire galaxy. Kethvaran opened his eyes. The reporters were still there, still watching, still recording every word. The lights in the room seemed brighter now. Or perhaps it was just the relief of reaching the end of his story. The war lasted 8 years. 8 years of blood and fire and death. 8 years of watching everything he knew fall apart. And in the end, the Dominion did something that had never happened in its 1,000-year history. It surrendered. Not a treaty. Not a negotiation. An unconditional surrender. The Dominion High Council put down their weapons and accepted whatever terms humans demanded. They had no choice. 60% of their military was destroyed. Their subject species were in open rebellion. Their own people were starving because human raids had broken their supply lines. The mighty Dominion was broken. Kethvaran was present at the surrender ceremony. He was one of the few senior officers still alive. Most had died in battle or taken their own lives rather than face defeat. But Kethvaran wanted to see it. He needed to see it. He needed to understand how his people had fallen so far. The ceremony was held on a Dominion space station near the center of their former empire. The High Council sat at a long table. Their robes were torn and dirty. Their faces showed exhaustion and shame. They looked like prisoners, not rulers. The humans arrived on a shuttle from the Defiant Hope. The ship was still flying, though it was covered in scars from 100 battles. It had become a symbol. Every species in the galaxy knew what that ship meant. Admiral Patricia Vance walked into the room first. She was 68 now. Her hair was completely white. Her face was lined with years of war. She moved slowly, like someone whose body was tired but whose spirit refused to stop. Behind her came the others. Kethvaran recognized some of them from intelligence reports. Maria Delgado, the resistance leader from Kepler's Hope. Her hair was gray now, but her eyes still burned with the fire he remembered from their first meeting. Lieutenant Cody Barnes, the navigator who had made the Defiant Hope's impossible jumps possible. General Rosa Medina, who had led the campaign that brought the Dominion to its knees. And behind them, in rows that stretched back to the shuttle and beyond, were soldiers. Human soldiers. Men and women of every age. Some were young, barely old enough to fight. Some were old, with white hair and wrinkled faces. Some were missing arms or legs or eyes. All of them had the same look in their eyes. The look of people who had survived something terrible and come out stronger. 1,000 humans filled that station. Each one represented millions who had died. Each one carried the weight of a species that had refused to be conquered. The High Council leader stood. His voice trembled as he spoke. "We accept your terms." The Dominion surrenders. "What do you demand of us?" Admiral Vance did not answer immediately. She looked around the room. She looked at the broken council members. She looked at the Dominion guards who stood with their weapons lowered, afraid to meet human eyes. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the entire room. "We did not ask for this war," she said. "Your people came to our homes. Your soldiers killed our families. Your weapons destroyed our worlds." She paused. 4 million people died on Eden's Rest. They had done nothing to you. They were just living their lives. And you erased them in 1 hour. She stepped forward. The council members flinched. "We will not forget what you did. The humans who died in this war will not be forgotten. Their names will be remembered forever. And the galaxy will remember what happens to those who attack humanity." She stopped directly in front of the council leader. She was small compared to him. Her head barely reached his chest. But he was the one who looked afraid. "We are not going to enslave you," Admiral Vance said. "We are not going to destroy your worlds or kill your people. That is not who we are." She leaned closer. "But we will be watching forever. If you ever threaten another species, if you ever try to build your empire again, if you ever forget this lesson, we will come back. And next time, we will not be so merciful." She stepped back. "That is all. This war is over." The silence that followed was the loudest sound Keth Varan had ever heard. The reporters in the interview room were quiet. Some of them were taking notes. Others were simply staring at Keth Varan with expressions he could not read. Fear, perhaps, or wonder, or both. One reporter finally spoke. "What do you want the galaxy to understand about humans?" Keth Varan thought about this question for a long time. He thought about Danny Ortiz flying his broken ship into a Dominion flagship. He thought about Maria Delgado fighting with farming tools against a professional army. He thought about Eddie Tran's smile as he walked into the command center. He thought about Pete Kowalski promising revenge with dead eyes. He thought about Admiral Vance standing small but unbreakable before the conquered Dominion. "Humans are not the strongest species," he said finally. "They are not the most advanced. They do not live the longest, or think the fastest, or breathe the quickest." He leaned forward. "But they do not break. They do not surrender. And they do not forgive." He touched the burn marks on his shell. The marks that would never heal. The marks that reminded him every day of what he had survived. When you fight a human, you are not fighting one soldier. You are fighting every human who has ever lived and every human who will ever be born. Their dead do not leave them. Their fallen become fuel for the living. They carry their ghost-like weapons. He looked directly at the cameras. He knew billions of beings were watching. Species who had never met humans. Species who might one day think about attacking human space. "I survived the human war front," Keth Varan said. "Most did not. And I tell you now, to every species listening, if you have any quarrel with humanity, settle it with words. Sit down at a table. Talk. Negotiate. Compromise. Do whatever you need to do to find peace." His voice grew harder. "Because if you fight them, they will not stop. They will not give up. They will not accept defeat. They will keep fighting until one of you no longer exists." He paused. and it will not be them. The interview ended. The cameras stopped recording. The reporters left, carrying Kethvaren's words to every corner of the galaxy. Years later, those words would be taught in schools on 1,000 worlds. They would be quoted by leaders trying to explain why their species had chosen peace with humanity. They would be remembered by generations who never knew war. And somewhere on Earth, on a green hill overlooking a rebuilt city, a memorial stood. On it were carved 4 million names from Eden's Rest, and below the names, a single phrase that humans had chosen to remember their dead. We did not start this war, but we ended it. For them, for all of them, forever. The wind blew across the hill. The names shone in the sunlight, and humanity looked up at the stars, watching, always watching. Just as Kethvaran had warned, just as they always would.